Because everyone knows the first thing you do when you rebuild an engine is drill a hole in the block. Welcome back to Everyday Garage, guys, and I am super excited. We are finally going to be building my GMC 302 Inline 6 and get it ready to go to be installed in the truck. I cannot tell you how excited I am, guys. I've had this engine for, I think, almost 4 years. I used to live in Portland, Oregon, and I saw an ad for a 1959 GMC bus that had an inline 6 in it. And I knew this was like a school bus size bus. And I knew if it was going to have inline 6 in it, it was mostly going to have the big 6, which is my 302 here. So I hit the ad up and I asked him what size the engine was. He didn't quite know, he wasn't familiar with it. So I went ahead and gambled. I went down there to check it out, and it was this engine. And I was super excited to find it. Downside was he would not just sell the engine to me. He's like, you got to take the whole bus. Upside is he was selling the bus for extremely cheap. So I went ahead and bought it up, and I pulled the motor right there in his yard. He had a 10-acre yard. I was like, do you mind if I pull it here in the middle? And it was kind of almost in front of his house, and they just watched me pull it that day. Downside was I tried as hard as I could to sell the rest of the bus. I could not, and to honor the deal I had with a guy, I went ahead and paid to have it scrapped. And I know scrapping the bus, it hurts me to even have to do that, but I did make a deal with the guy, and I had to honor that I would get it out of his yard. And I had nowhere to put it because I had no land at the time. Now, I do have a video of that at the scrap yard, so here's that. And as you can see, guys, it was a nice old bus, but unfortunately, again, I couldn't keep it. But the engine will live on. We are going to rebuild this. And I have so many parts for this, so many. I've got performance parts, shiny parts, and as you can see, I have a ton more parts. I was never supposed to be the one to actually assemble this engine. I commissioned a machine shop to do a short block on this, but it obviously isn't short blocked. For some of you that don't know that, that's simply just putting the crankshaft, camshaft, connecting rods and pistons together. So basically the rotating assembly and sending it back, and I was just gonna slam the rest together. But after a year and a half, lots of calling and interesting conversations, it is not done still. I finally just had to go over there and be like, look, just give me what you have, I'll finish the rest. Luckily, the block is machined, and we do have the freeze plugs in, so we're basically right as if I had just dropped it off with the intention to rebuild it myself. Only downside is I had asked for 60 overbore, mainly just for some, performance upgrades. You can actually bore these out to 1/8 of an inch over, so 60 overbore still left plenty of rooms for rebuilds. But it's only a 30. That's fine though, really it is, because as long as it's ready to go, I'm happy. Now I've never rebuilt an engine before, so I'm gonna do the smart thing and rebuild this completely from the ground up. This should be fun. One of the things that I want to do before I assemble this block is add the ability to have a full oil filtration system. Back in the 50s, that wasn't really a thing. They had like canister filters and bypass filters, and I'll put a picture of that here. Most of you are probably familiar with. If you're not, it doesn't really, it filters maybe 20 to 30% of the oil. So we're gonna add one of these TransAdapt filter relocation kits to it. Looks like this if you're not familiar with it. We can put a modern spin-on oil filter and just run oil lines to it. But in order to do that, I have to drill holes in the block. What can go wrong when you do that? Now, this is a well-documented modification. The machine shop was supposed to do this, but again, they didn't do it. So it's on me. So, like I said, it's well-documented, so I'll put a link down in the description of where you can find the kind of modifications I'll be doing. Now, let's go ahead and get this started. Again, holes in the block. What could go wrong? So, what we're going to end up doing is a lot of modifications, but we need to add a hole here. So this is going to be our oil to the filter, and this is going to be our oil back to the engine. But before we start anything else, I need to flip the engine over and show you what we're going to do. So here we are underneath the engine, and this is basically where we got to do a little bit of the modification. Now the oil pump goes here, oil from the oil pump comes into here and goes all the way through and then out towards the engine. What we're going to do is put a plug in there. That way we can create a bypass for the oil filtration. That'll make sense later. But to do that, we're going to have to drill into, or not drill, but just tap for the plug. Now this is already tapped larger for where the oil threads in, but as you can see, if you go a little further down, right about there, we can tap for the plug. So I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on here, or a lot of it all in the, it's fine. Let's do it off to the side. All right, a little bit of cutting fluid on here and go all the way in. And try to square it up. Now we're only gonna put a 1/2 inch plug in, so I don't have to go too deep. And that should just about do it. Let me see if I can show you guys. So if you guys can see right in there, you can kind of tell where the threads are. And there is our pile of leftover shavings. Let's go ahead and vacuum that out. We're definitely going to be like blowing everything out and cleaning that thoroughly before we ever put oil in it, but at least that's kind of cut and ready to go. Now with the engine rotated upward, we need to drill a hole 1 1/8 inches from below this platform here. But I want to make it completely square with the hole, so I'm going to try to measure that out first. Strike a line, basically roughly in this area. Okay, and then we take the tape measure and kind of measure it up 1/8 inches. Let's see. Yeah, right about there. So here. Seems to be exactly where we need to be. Now, with that pretty much as centered as we can get it, we just kind of take the leap and go for it. Let me see, mark. You know, measure 16 more times and pray to God we don't mess this up. Because everyone knows the first thing you do when you rebuild an engine is drill a hole in the block. Well, no turning back now. Now with it all drilled out, we just tap it with a 3/8 MBT tap. I do not have a handle big enough for it, so we're just gonna wrench it on. Come on, stay straight. Came out not bad, and to say I was terrified is an understatement. So there you go, you can see my finger behind it. Threads look pretty good, we're pretty centered up with that. And basically this is going to be from the pump. Should thread in just like this. There we go. And then this will be back to the engine block. Now I definitely have some adapters because I'm going to go from 3/8 to 1/2 inch MBT, and that'll go out to the oil filter, but that's pretty much how it's going to go. I'm not going to set up the oil filter yet just because we're going to do that once the engine's all together. Last thing we need to do is get that plug that we tapped in so that we can separate the two ports. I'm just going to put some red Loctite on this, as this should never need to come out. Let's just go for it. We need to take these off anyways. Let me pop that cap off, it's in the way. And that's with the plug installed. And with the plug in, that finishes out the mod. Really quick, simple, and straightforward, and a really great mod that's gonna yield a ton of benefits. So I'm really happy that we got that done. And when I plumbed it and everything else, we'll go over exactly how it's all plumbed. Now it's time to get the actual assembly going. So the first thing to go in is the crankshaft. But let's go ahead and get that rear main seal set up, which is a rope seal. So that's gonna be fun. And from what I understand, you know, out of 100 times you put it in, it leaks 100 times. So hopefully we can get something sealed up here. And of course, the first thing it asked me to do is drill a hole. There is a lot more drilling holes into blocks than I would imagine for engine building. All right, guys, let's get started. In the instructions, it asks us to drill a hole for this pin that 1/8 inch is exposed. So this pin is 5/16 inch long. So we need to drill 3/16 inch down. So what I did was I took a 1/16 inch drill bit and I just kind of measured it out and taped it off with some tape so we can go straight down. And there's our pin installed, and all that's going to do is hold the rope seal from slipping back and forth, from what I understand. Now we just take our rope seal, and I kind of poked a hole in the back here like it said in the instructions, and slam it in. Oh, it was a little off. How about there? And it says you can use a socket or anything. I'm just going to use this pipe to just press it in. And you really want to smash it from what I've kind of gathered. This engine stand rolls super easy, so it's kind of difficult. That's about as good as I'm gonna get it. I'm pushing hard. Oh, right when that happened. I was trying to avoid rolling it over like that. But I don't think I'm gonna get this anymore like that. So, I'll call this good. Then you're supposed to stick this here and just trim it. It's a little spacer to make sure you're not trimming it exactly flush. Just don't slip and cut your finger. I just christened the block. Damn it. Now that we got the rope seal in, we can jump over here and get these crank bearings cleaned up and get them in. The crank was ground 10 under, so I found some new old stock 10 under Cleveite bearings from the 1960s. This is super cool, guys. Cleveland Graphite Bronze, Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveite. So this is back when Cleveite was in Cleveland, Ohio. So pretty old, and it's awesome. It's original packing slip, packed by employee number 4354 on 464. So this box hasn't been opened because it was all in the original papers and all that since 1964. Now all I'm doing is, it's got a bit of like scale from the ages on it. So what I'm doing is just taking some quad zero and lightly cleaning up the area. I'm not putting any pressure. I don't want to take any material away. I just want to get all that scale off. And I already called the machine shop and talked to them about like how to get this off, and they said this is exactly what they do. You just clean them up like that, and eventually they look like that, nice and shiny. So we can get these all cleaned up. These are quality bearings, a lot better than what you can buy today. So I'm excited to have these guys. Let me clean this up and we'll jump over to the block. So these are all shiny and cleaned up. Already got this one in. These are not interchangeable, guys. Every single bearing that goes in here is different. The rear one has this extra lip. And then the rear middle, or I think they call it, has this kind of clamshell style. It's built-in thrust bearing. And then you could tell because it's machined right here for it. I'll just pop this one in. And this one over here, these look almost identical, but they're not. This is actually a larger diameter. Pops in like that. And there we go. There we go. That's in. Now with the crank in, I'm just going to use a little bit of plastic gauge. And most of you probably know what this is, but basically you set it there, tighten down the bearings, and then that way we can measure clearance. Basically how much it squishes it, and then it uses these little measurements here, and you can kind of come over and measure it. So I went ahead and already threw the rope seal into the top of the this one, the back of the rear main seal, just to make sure it's all where it needs to. And with the plastic gauge in, we will just drop each one in. And then I am taking a little bit of that ARP fastener lube, just because we are going to have to torque these fully down right now to measure the clearance. So might as well have accurate torque specs using this. Come on. There it is. And if you can see, guys, so that's the squish from it, and I was hoping for a little better. Oh, don't drop it. But we are, I'd say, between 2 and 3 thousandths, so like 2.5 thousandths. That's pretty consistent all the way across the bearings, guys, so we should be okay. I was hoping for a little bit better, honestly. I wanted a nice solid 2 thousandths all the way across. We definitely did not get that. Oh well. Now with that all squared away, I forgot that I need to put this oil baffle in. And all this is, so this is the oil fill right here. I'm guessing, I mean, it doesn't really reference it too much, is that you put that in to keep the oil from splashing back out. And all I have is the original screws with the old copper washers. So I'm going to put a little bit of thread sealant on it. My favorite thread sealant is Loctite 545. This stuff is amazing and it seals better than anything I've seen. It lasts up to 300 degrees, which hopefully the engine doesn't get that hot. And you can use it in engines and stuff. I looked up the reference for it. Plus, it's that, honestly, I think it's that red stuff when you buy like hydraulic fittings and things like that. I think that's what this is that it comes on. Just slip this in. Bam. All right, some assembly lube. I'll slather it unnecessarily everywhere. Way too much. There we go. Bearings nice. And the not into the bore. You're supposed to slather it on the seal also. It actually says put it directly onto the seal. I'm really worried that thing's gonna leak, but you know, we'll deal with that when the time comes. There we go. And just a healthy dose everywhere of this assembly lube. Man, it smells like snot. There we go. And just everywhere. Making a damn mess. There we go. Now for the rear main seal, it does say put a little bit of RT everywhere but the rope end where there's going to be a sealing surface. So I'm basically just going to put it all around the metal, just avoid the rope end. But like I've said, from what I understand, it's impossible to get these not to leak, so if we get a small leak, it just is what it is. If you guys know tricks of how to get this stuff to stop leaking, these rear mains with these rope seals, please do let me know. This is the graphite best gasket, I think I mentioned that. So it's supposed to be the better one out of like the Fel-Pro, but who really knows? There we go. Just everywhere. And down. Right? This way. Yes. All installed, and it's nice and loose. Needs a little bit of a push to get started here, and then I can turn it by hand. Nice and tight. I like it. So we are good to go there. Finally, the first piece to go in. I'm super excited. So what we need to do now before we can jam this camshaft in, and I start talking about the camshaft, we need to get the timing cover plate on because the plate has to go on before the timing set goes on. We'll just press fit onto the crankshaft. So let's turn this beast over. There we go. Definitely get yourselves one of these two-legged, engine stands. Mainly because this thing is so long, being 6-cylinder, but that 4-inch bore, like it sticks out forever. I feel like one of those smaller ones would just topple over. And now I have assembly lube literally everywhere, but it's okay. I'm gonna have a pre-lubed engine. Clean up our front here, and this is where the timing cover is gonna go, and our timing set. Here's our timing cover plate, and it says in the book, go ahead and make sure it's nice and flat. It's waving to me, is what's going on here. So, must have got dented at some point. So let's go ahead and knock that back into shape. Man, that's threaded too. Where does that go? That's wild. Nothing a little body hammer action on Big Red over here can't handle. Let's see. It's not loud at all. Should we get a little bit more aggressive? There we go. That's the sound I was looking for. There we go. We're nice and straight now. I'll take that. RTV will take up any other inconsistencies. So here's our gasket and our rebuild kit.
just got to figure out, you know, which way it goes. There's this. Oh yeah, like that. I'll go ahead and apply both sides here, and then we'll go ahead and throw it over there. Definitely want to make sure this sticks. Like I said, I'm trying to avoid as many leaks as I actually can. There you go, all the RTV I could get. I know that is way too much, and people may say something, but I'll tell you what. Like I said, I do not want a single leak on this engine. And it's okay. So we just run these screws in here, kind of measure them up. Just go, go. Nope, okay. Got a new bolt for over here. There we go. Heard that ding, that is my Easy Bake Oven going off. We'll talk about that in a second. There we go. So what it says in the book is to basically stake the metal. So basically you want to bend the metal a little bit, create like a locking tab effect. And I don't really have anything perfect for that, but we can try basically this. Just want to spread the metal so it doesn't want to actually turn on its own. Now what we need to do is get the crank gear on, and you use these Woodruff keys to kind of line it up. So, but they don't really want to go back in right now. Now the gear, the timing gear is a, or crankshaft gear, is a press fit. So in the book it just says hammer it on. Don't really feel comfortable hammering on the crankshaft like that, so I threw it in here. Now the gears say that you can heat it up, so I put it in my Easy Bake Oven here. Anybody remember the Easy Bake Ovens? Those were amazing. I'd bake brownies, I mean my sister would bake brownies in there. Look, don't judge me, those things were amazing. And we have been at 200 degrees here for roughly an hour, so we should be good to go. Bring it over and see if we can get it to fit. Still hot. Chamfered side on the inside. No. That's instant no. Oh, come on. I was hoping for a way better fit than that. Oh well. That's hot too. It's like hot. Are we lined up? Sort of, kind of, yeah. Good enough. What am I looking at here? It's popping it out. Damn it. Whew, that's hot. It's not lined up. Come on, so much. Come on up. Come on. There we go. And hammering on the crankshaft is what I'm doing. That should do it. It's bottomed all the way out. We got our timing mark out here. We're on the right side. Oiler's good. We're turning just fine. Cool. Ooh, RTV in my crank bearings. My camshaft bearing. It's always a good sign. Now with the crank gear in, we can finally get to this camshaft. I'm super excited about this camshaft, guys. So, if anybody's familiar with the GMC Inlines, there's really no aftermarket support for them. It's not like you can really go in and buy a camshaft. So I had to send this out to get reground. I sent this to Oregon Cam Grinders in Oregon, and they're awesome. I called up the guy's an old timer. He knew exactly what the engine was. He was familiar with it. He actually has profiles set up for it. He told me what he normally likes to do with them, what I was looking for. He was easy to talk to. I mean, it was a 15-minute conversation. He knew exactly what cam grind I would need. He actually has profiles on their website you could pick from if you're kind of figuring it out. I didn't know anything about camshafts when I kind of started into this. I've learned a little bit. I know I accentuate on this channel that everything is for my first time, and it is absolutely true, but I do a massive amount of research, guys. So after talking to him, learning all about cams, we decided to go the 818 grind, which is a 212 duration
which from my understanding is all about the power band. So this gives me really good power between 1200 RPMs up to about 5000 RPM. So I'm really excited about that, which is really where I want to go, because remember, I've talked about this. This engine is going to be towing, it's going to be for daily driving, it is not going to be a drag strip. So that's the kind of power band I'm looking for. It gives me a 110 lobe separation, which could give me a real nice idle, but still provide me with enough power. And then it'll give me a 431 lift with a 1.5 rocker ratio. From my understanding, that's enough lift to definitely get a lot of power in that power band and take advantage of the head upgrades that I've done, and I'll show you guys that in a second. Now, that's my understanding of what those three numbers are definitely going to be for this. If I've made any mistake there, drop down in the comments, let me know. I'm still learning about cams, but I think I have that small little grasp of it. We have this together. Now, it's all done. I got enough here. So for this thrust bearing behind here, you need 3 to 6 thousandths. I have 7. I'm not going to tap it a little bit to get it. I think 7 is going to be just fine. So as long as it's loose is kind of the idea. And then I have this. Wow. Okay. Whew, nice. I have some cam paste, which is basically has the moly sulfide in it, which is what I was told to use when I asked some friends of mine. So we're going to go with that. Let's go ahead and paste this thing up and slam it in. Let's get this done, guys. It is completely coated. I'm just going to lightly try to get through here without destroying or marring any surfaces as I hit something. There we go. These bearings are, riding surfaces are different sizes, so it makes it a little easier to get through here. There's not a lot of room. Okay, we'll just go slow. All right, with this installed, our timing marks all line up. So all we need to do now is go ahead and put these in. I'm gonna Loctite, it doesn't say that, but I'm gonna Loctite these a little bit. You definitely do not want these. This is pretty much what holds the camshaft in. Just these 2 little bolts here, and they go right through there into the thrust plate. All that's left for that is just putting the timing cover on. Now, this is the original one, and it needs to be cleaned up. I'm gonna hit it on the wire wheel, and it's already been de-rusted. You can kind of see where all the staining is. I just dumped this in a bucket of evapor rust for a couple of days, pulled it out, all the rust was gone. Now we just need a wire wheel to make it look good. But it's pretty pitted. I mean, all kind through here. You can definitely see there was a lot of moisture getting through, and it's a bit wavy like our other one. We definitely want this to seal up, so a little bit of body work is going to be necessary just to make sure everything kind of lines up real nice. So let me go through and whoop this thing into shape, and we'll get back to you. A little bit of work, and it came out fantastic. It still has a ton of pitting, but you know, nothing a little RTV can't fix. I'll take it, a little bit of rust staining, but that's gonna look awesome. What we need to do now is I need to get the timing cover seal in. This is for the crank pulley, seals it out, just should slip right in. It actually does say you're supposed to RTV this in the book. That's kind of weird, but we'll go ahead and listen to what it says. Drop a little RTV in and smash it in. Well, that should do it. It's in. I kind of whammied one little area, but I don't have another seal, so it's going to be fine. I did check it on the crank pulley already. It looks like it's sealing okay, so we're going to run it. But we're in. So we just need to get our gasket in, which I think something like that. And of course, as the theme has been going, a very, very healthy amount of RTV. Really do need it for all the pitting, because this is very pitted here, and actually on the cover plate that's on the engine, it's pretty pitted also. So I'm definitely gonna just apply it straight here. I'm not gonna apply it to the gasket. Slam the gasket on, put RTV on the back of the gasket, and then get this on. All right, we're ready to slam it together. Now what we need to do is put our little mount in here. Look at that. You think they really cared at the factory? That's why. If it works, it works, right? Like that, or is it go the other way? Let me see. Now this is just the front mount. This is what mounts to the front cross member. It is so much easier to get in and out with that timing plate off. Oh yeah, that looks like how it's supposed to go.
Now I've already rotated this to make sure it fits, but I'll show you guys in a little bit. What I want to do real quick is put a little bit of assembly lube on the gears. That way they're pre-lubed. And a little bit there. No, there it is. Just going everywhere again. That way it's not running dry. Okay, calm down. And we'll just get this bad boy on. Damn. Now I know some people are against all that RTV, or people do it, and then some people say it's sloppy with all that RTV, but I will tell you what. If I gotta pick between maybe, could be, possibly leak, or just a little bit of RTV squeeze out you gotta stare at, I will go with the RTV squeeze out. Well, I thought the camera was on, but it wasn't. No big deal. So basically, I flipped it over, and what there's 2 bolts for the timing cover that actually go through the main bearing cap. Kind of a weird setup. There is a modification that people have done where you can do it from the front, because basically now you have to drop the oil pan to get these bolts out if you want to get your timing cover off. Now, I was going to do that modification, but I forgot. So here we are. We're just kind of chunking away here. So this is just all the way through into the front cap. I put some thread sealant on it, and it has some copper washers per the book. And we'll just get it nice and snug. And then you torque it down to 10 to 15 foot-pounds. Now the crank is in, and I don't know if I can get to it. Let me see if I can. Yeah, there it is. And there we are. And if anybody wanted to see the rotating assembly actually moving, which is super exciting for me, everything moves nice and smooth. Cam's moving with it. Ah! Almost lost a finger, but yeah, it's all working nice, guys. I'm excited. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just excited, okay? This is coming together, and I dare say it pretty decently. With the camshaft and the timing cover on, we can finally get the heart of this engine together. And for me, that's going to be the pistons, guys. I am super excited about this, especially since I have this box of goodies right here. Now, as I've talked about before, there's little to no aftermarket support really for this, except minor stuff. So if you really wanted new pistons, the only option was to go custom, which is what we did. You could definitely find some new old stock every once in a while, but if you do an overbore, good luck on that. So we went with an overbore of our, remember we got a 30 over. Also, for the 1959 rating of this motor, which is kind of the bus that I pulled it out of, is a 59, even though this is a 52 to 54 block, we'll go into that later anyways, is a 7.5 to 1 compression ratio. And I definitely am going to want more power for this motor, and the best way to do that is up your compression ratio. And for the choices that I had, is like decking the block or trying to take some off the head to get that compression ratio up, I decided to do it in the pistons. We were already going custom pistons anyways. Now, we went with this company, Racetech. They're a local company, and I guess the machine shop was familiar working with them because they did all my measurements for me. They sent all the stuff over. So we have our nice forged pistons. Man, look at that. That looks so good. Also, this is an older design for the oil rings. It's 3 compression rings and an oil ring. We have the standard, or more commonly seen, the 2 compression ratios, 2 compression rings and the oil ring. Also, this is grooved for small block Chevy rings, so I can easily replace a ring or find stuff over the counter. Whereas this is kind of a special size. This would have been pretty difficult to deal with. I'm going to keep these. These aren't in bad shape, but I'm definitely glad to have these. And to up that compression ratio, we went to 9 1/4 to 1. So a nice upgrade. I'm super excited about that. Still be able to run off pump gas. And the way that they did it is basically they took the wrist pin and they moved it down, just slightly. They moved that wrist pin location down, which basically puts us higher up in the cylinder, creating more compression. So we're definitely do some measurements and stuff. I'm a little bit weary about this. So they stuck with the flat top design. The piston company did, because they went off what the machine shop did. Now the machine shop did CC my head at 112 cc, so it's got, it's a large
port. I don't know, what do you call that? It's LRCC. Now, all we gotta do is jump over there, do some ring measurements, and we should be good to go, guys. Let's get this done. This machine shop that I went with is wild. Like, I'm just now opening up these rings. I just, I assumed it was a new box, so I didn't even bother. So this is a box for a small block Chevy, so it even says on here 8 cylinders, right? They charged me full price for it, which is fine. I don't even mind. With a 10% markup, and I don't care. That's kind of just what you do. No big deal. I bought them. Oh, I opened it up. There is only 6 rings in here, which is all that I need for a 6-cylinder, but I paid for the 8. So they actually went in here and pulled out 2 whole sets. What? Ah, man, that machine shop is wild, guys. All right, let's go over here and get these rings gapped. Most of you are probably familiar with this, so we'll just get the compression ring in here and kind of push it in. There we go. Nice and even, like making sure that our dot, which represents the top, is where it needs to be. Take a piston and kind of just push it down nice and even. There we go. Now, I mean, like I said, I've never rebuilt an engine, but from research, so I'm not teaching in this at all. But we definitely want at least 16 thousandths for this 4. And that 16 right there, move kind of smooth, so we definitely have it. But let's make sure our gap isn't too, which it's not, I can tell. So let's try 18 thou. That's got a lot of drag, doesn't fit all the way through, so we're good to go on that ring. And then, so like I said, you're supposed to basically, on a street engine, you want about 4 thousandths per cylinder inch bore. So like 4-inch bore times 4 thousandths, 16 thousandths of an inch. Plus this is 430, so 17 is kind of ideal. And we're good to go. So I'm gonna go through, I'll do the rest of the cylinders the same way, and we'll get it ready to set up, guys. And just like that, we have all 6 pistons and connecting rods together. And it looks good. I am super excited, guys. The only real last thing to do before we throw this into the engine is put on the rod bearings. Now, for the rod bearings, this is super cool. This is one of those geek out moments, guys. So when I ordered it from the guy that I found it from, it came in this canvas bag, original packaging, never been opened. Like, ever. I actually had to cut this canvas just to check on it because I needed to make sure the product is right. He must have figured it out from the part number on the outside. And of course it says 10 under, which is exactly what our crank is, so it is exactly what we need. Man, this is awesome. So this is Moraine connecting rods. It's a General Motors Corporation. I had to do some digging. Some of you probably already know about the Moraine, hopefully I'm saying that right, assembly plant. So I didn't know that they actually had their own product line. So this started in, I want to say the mid-20s is what I read. And they first came out with like an oil light bearing and then kept producing products. And then in World War II, the Moraine Assembly Plant and the Moraine Products Division is one of the assemblies that was repurposed for manufacture of wartime weapons and tanks and guns. I actually put a couple pictures up of the stuff that's still like, that they made. And apparently if you find it, you can actually find the Moraine label on them. And here's some of those pictures. So that's really cool, guys. And of course, this is probably about the same era because, again, this is a 1950s engine. So I'm excited to have this. Never opened. And this is why you go for the new old stock if you can find it, guys. Still sitting in there, ready to go. The only downside is this, it smells like, you've been to like those old like factories or the museums where nothing's been touched. It's definitely got that like old smell to it. Now, the only downside is these bearings are coated in this thick grease. So I'll have to go through and degrease all of this. I'm guessing it was like an oiled paper and just over the years it has completely gunktified. But really nice and beautiful letter, and you can see it says 10 under. Everything under there is nice and shiny. I'm excited to have these. So I'm just gonna go through and degunk all this and clean them up, and I'll bring you guys back when we slap these bearings in. All cleaned up and taken care of, and even hit it with a little bit of the Quad Zero because a little bit had some staining, like
like this one here, if you can kind of see. Now, that was a horrible experience. I'm so glad I saved you on that. It took me a little over an hour, and there's just, let me show you. I've got, yeah, rags and just all that nasty grease. It did not want to come off. And, you know, the worst part is you can't use brushes or anything because you can't mar the bearing surface. But definitely worth it to have this cool little piece of history in the truck. Now I'm just going to oil the cylinder a little bit, and once we're done putting it in, we'll take all the oil off the top of the cylinder. I know people don't like doing that because you could glaze the cylinder, but this will just help the rings go in, and then we'll clean it up later. Now I'm just going to use a basic ring compressor, which is right here. I think this, I got it for like $7 at Harbor Freight. Now I'm going to try to clock like we talked about. So I guess 10 and 2 and 4 and 8. I guess it doesn't matter which is which, just, you know, keep that in mind, I guess. Now also I have the crank at its lowest position, so that way I have plenty of room to put the rod in. There we go. I'm just gonna use the handle from that hammer we just broke. So. Come on. You know what's funny about this is I always joke about how I need to do things first and then show you guys, but I think I kind of like the idea of, hey, watch me struggle. Maybe I have it too tight. I think I just have it too tight. Hey, watch me struggle so you can understand that, you know, struggle is also part of it. Yeah. Let me do a little figuring, I'll bring you back. That's in. And now, so I have my other bearing in here. What I want to do is go ahead and hit it with the plastic gauge again. Even though I think everything's going to be just fine. Just want to verify real quick. My bearings might even be too tight. So here's our mark, and it's about 1/1000. It's a bit tight, but I'm gonna leave it, and we'll kind of go through and see the others. I think I over torqued just that side a little bit, anyways. So we'll call it good. Now we can install it for real. Squeeze a bunch of assembly lube down into that bottom bearing. You know, just let it run. Pretty much like that. Now, what's gonna happen, guys, is like we did when we put it all together. I just did this one with you guys. I am not gonna bore the heck out of you by doing all 6 like this. I will spend the time going ahead and do that. Oh man, guys, I will tell you what. You know, I felt like things were going too well, and they definitely were. So as you can see, not everything is in. Let's just get to it. You saw that I put the #1 piston in. I had it all done up, and we plastic gauged it. I did show that. Now it was very tight, and anyone who's done this before, that's, you know, not me, would automatically recognize that I was obliterating that plastic gauge. It was well beyond 1/1000 of smash. So I thought, oh, it's just a little tight, no big deal. First off, you never want your rod bearings that tight. I do know that now, and good thing we didn't run anything. Well, we couldn't have. So I went ahead and decided to go on to piston 2. Like I said, I was doing everything off camera. Went to rotate the engine, did not want to rotate or rotate the crank so that I could get the piston position correct for the rod. You know what I'm saying? The rod to where it needed to be, to the crank, that thing. Wouldn't rotate, and it wouldn't rotate because, well, it was just too tight. So what I did was I loosened up the nuts on the bearing cap, and immediately the engine would rotate. Let me know this stuff was too tight. I went ahead and installed piston 2, the rod for piston 2, and basically just to see what was going on, and same thing, you know. Basically repeated the same thing, expecting a different result. So I immediately knew, well, I have to stop here. So. And then, you know, I started thinking back, obviously it was too tight. And I went ahead and pulled these bearings out. Now what these are the original bearings. They are a little scuffed up and needed basically to be replaced.
but I had the machine shop hold on to them. I like to hold on to stuff like that just in case. Now I went ahead and pulled a piston 3 with the rod, and we went ahead and mocked it up with the original bearing. Of course, everything fit. It's a little loose, which I knew that would kind of be a situation. Plastic gauged it, and I'll show that picture here. Now that is a proper squish. So basically, I knew that something was wrong at that point. So I went ahead and finally, for the first time, which I should have done from the beginning, and measured the rod journals. And I measured them all. So this is a standard grind on this. This simply was polished. Now, from the machine shop, they did tell me it was a 10-10 grind, which is a 10 means for the main and a 10 for the rod. Now, I did call back today because it is the next day, and I just said, hey, I want to verify that grind. They did say it was a 10-10. I let them know that it is not, and they let me know that they didn't grind it, which is pretty standard practice from what I understand, but they didn't measure it when I got back. And I don't know. I'd say that's definitely kind of on them, but at the same time, it's on me because I didn't measure it when I received it. But it doesn't matter about fault, guys. This is where we're at now, and the upside is we have a crank that where the rod bearings haven't needed to be ground, nice polish. So it means we actually have a better crank in the end. So what I did was, I do know a parts supplier, Obsolete Automotive, guy Jude. I've worked with him before. He's a nice guy. I just called him up, let him know my situation. He said, yes, I do have bearings like that. They're not the really cool history ones that we have that I spent, you know, an hour and a half cleaning up. Really glad I did that. These are, I think, Federal Mogul. I think I said that right. New old stock. He's gonna send me over. He didn't have the standard. He did have a 0.002. So basically, he said, typically when you get your crank polished, they take 1,000ths or 2,000ths off. That's the kind of bearing you want to go with. Plus, it's all that he had. So he sent those over. That's going to take 3-4 days to get here. No big deal. He's out of Virginia. I'm in SoCal. You know, mail is what it is. Actually, I do have a little project we can do while we wait for that, so we can still progress on the engine, guys. I was looking into the oil pan, and I'm realizing it doesn't actually fit, because it fits about 95% basically. Basically, if you bottom out, you're gonna hit that oil pan. And while most of the driving, hopefully we're not bottoming out all the time, it's still, if we can change that and, you know, put something better in, we will. Turns out that the 228 oil pan, look at this little crazy thing. This is Pepper, this is the shop assistant. She has to hang out with me today because we're doing stuff inside, and she is not happy about it. That dog lives a better life than I do. I tell you, you can tell by the sweater. She's one pampered little girl. Anyways, the 302, the 228 oil pan that was on the original engine will swap onto here. It'll be exact clearance, it'll fit, just a couple modifications we have to make. And we have to clean up this nasty, nasty thing. Oh man, I just popped this off. I went and swapped it out with the 302 pan, and man, this is gunky inside. I mean, look at this. I don't think this ever saw proper maintenance ever. I can't believe that engine ran so well. That's just thick, thick stuff. All coated, so that's gonna be fun to clean up. And you know, the upside is that 302 pan had a little bit of pitting on the side here I was kind of worried about, but this is perfectly preserved by all the dinosaur juice that is all over this thing. This is gonna suck having to clean up. A few things that you have to do when you swap that out though is because it's a shallower pan. So this is the one that came off the 302, and this is the one off the 228. It's just, the snout here is just a bit shorter, so you definitely want to swap this out. You need this shorter snout. And it does look like the pickup or the float here is going to be exactly the same, so I'm definitely going to use that one for all the obvious reasons. And then of course you're going to need the dipstick. But since I already had all of that, I might as well just use it, even though it's a little bit more work to go ahead and get that cleaned up. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out, get all of that stuff off it. And then I'm going to put this in like a vat of TSP degreaser. Let's see if we can clean that up, guys. Well, guys, the bearings came in, and obviously, as you can see, everything is moving as it should. So that is kind of crisis averted. I went ahead and just rolled those new bearings in right away.
just to see if everything was going to fit, because I could not wait for the camera, and it does. So now all we have to do is go ahead and knock these in. I didn't plastic gauge these yet because there's too much assembly lube and all that stuff all over it. So let's go ahead and get these 3 in, all tightened down. We'll plastic gauge one of them just for posterity's sakes, because reality, if these don't fit or they're not quite right, I'm running out of options. So if those don't fit, we won't have anything that does. All right, let's get these in. And they're all in. Told you I'd get a little better with this thing. For the bearings, it's Federal Mogul. These are the ones I was able to find. I'm really happy to find these. These are made in the USA, so that's nice. I definitely wanted to get new old stock stuff. You know, the part stuff that you can get nowadays is a little dicey, so I'm glad to have these. I did talk about where I took some steel wool on those other main bearings to knock down some of the, what do I call it, scale. I was not talking about the white that comes on here, guys. I do know that that is totally natural for these. The ones on the main bearings, which I looked at the footage, you can't really tell. It's a little bit of surface rust. Nothing that would cause anything, but something you definitely want to knock off your bearings. Now, this white kind of film that comes on these bearings, I'm absolutely leaving alone. Now, these look great. No grease, no surface rust. These are by far the best new old stock bearings I've received for this engine thus far. Now let's go ahead and plastic gauge this just to make sure that we're, you know, somewhere in the ballpark when we need to. And it looks great. We're looking at a nice tight clearance of about 1.5 thousandths of an inch, which is perfect. We need a 1 to 3. We are right there in the middle. So we have great bearings now. Okay, now what we need to do is just switch out the snouts. So I talked about this short snout is going to be for that 228 oil pan that we're going to throw on there. This being the tall snout, obviously a lot bigger. Now this is actually the 228 pickup or float. I did clean it up pretty good. Actually came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. But I'm going to go ahead and just save it for later. I do get a little bit of black when I get out there. And since that oil pan was so bad, I just want to go ahead and use this one. Looks better. It looks like it's been through a lot less surface rust was on it. Plus, this definitely was hot tanked. So I know that at least the inside in here is nice and clean. So I already have it put on. We got our cotter pin in and it's ready to go. As far as the oil pump itself, the gears looked really good. So I didn't even bother rebuilding or buying new ones or anything like that. Checked all the clearances, were solid. All I had to do was come in here and pop the relief valve in and clean everything out when I got it back from the machine shop. But I'd say this looks really, really good. Now, all I'm going to do is, I already did it a little bit, but put a little bit more assembly lube in here. That way when this thing starts up, all the gears are nice and lubed up. Now, what's kind of interesting is these bolts here, as you can see it, they have a hole in them. I don't know if the camera will focus on that. But basically, when you popped this bad boy on, which I think goes just like that, they would run a wire all the way through each bolt so that if anyone have ever backed out, it wouldn't go into the engine. That's actually kind of cool. I'm not going to put that wire back. I got a little lock washers on them, and then what we're going to do is just put some Loctite on it. Some red Loctite, because honestly, we should never have to take this apart. Now, over here at the engine, it is simply just dropping it down right here. It has a little hole, and what we want to do is get a set screw into that hole. Now I have this all lubed up with some engine oil, and we are going to have to turn this engine over to make room. Let's go all the way around. Yeah, not a ton of room. Hard to show you guys, but it's no big deal. You just set this set screw, and it kind of just hold it in place. Yeah, there you go. It's locked into place. We just take our jam nut and tighten it down. Well, I had to take the pump back out in usual fashion because this crossover pipe that runs from the pump. So the pickup comes through here. Oil is then pumped through this pipe and down to that hole that we drilled and then out to our oil filter, or it was the way it's going to be. Otherwise, it would have just gone out to the block. It's finally time to close this bad boy up and called the bottom end done. So we just got to get the gasket on, and it is the small block Chevy style gaskets, guys. So the sucky ones. We're going to have to do the 4-piece gasket each side and then, you know, kind of run this cork bit over the side. It does say use gasket cement in the manual, so we will definitely be using a liberal amount of RTV, because the downside to this type of gasket, as most of you small block Chevy guys know, is it leaks from the corners over here, right, where this 4-piece gasket meets. So I'm just going to slather an insane amount of gasket sealer on there, and let's drop the oil pan down. Gasket is laid in and ready to go. I actually had to trim the cork gaskets along the main bearings, but we'll see if it seals. They're way too fat. It would not fit into the groove. Let's kind of get this down. Sure. And this oil pan looks good, doesn't it? It came out fantastic. I'm super happy about this. That does it. We are finally done. After putting about 1,000 bolts in, that is a lot of bolts to hold this thing on. Here we are with the head for our 302. Now, this is not the head that came on our 302. The one that came on it was way too small for it. I ran the casting numbers on it. It was for the 228. So the chamber was all wrong for the 302. The only head for the 302 you can really use is the 270H head and the 302 heads, obviously. And then even when I took the thing apart, the head gasket was for a 228. So the firing ring for the cylinder bore was way too small. I mean, the thing was all messed up. So unfortunately, definitely, I had to go out and find a head. I did find a guy who does sell these and sells them just like if you buy them off the shelf. I bought it just like this, ready to go from a machine shop with new valves, with new springs in it. So I'll put a link to it down before. JJ's Inlines. I'm not sure if he's still doing business. I heard that he was trying to get out of it now, but I got him before he got out of it. So this is a beautifully ready to go head. Beautifully done, ready to go head. And with some upgrades. So we have 194 intake and 160 exhaust. I can't talk. So 194 intake and 160 exhaust. Small block Chevy valves. So we are able to get a ton more air. This is going to be a nice little upgrade for this engine. I'm super excited about that. Be able to move a lot of air, because the downside of these inlines, they kind of get choked up. And on top of that, we have new springs. These are actually Cummins springs. So normally guys who like to upgrade these inline 6s, they put Z28 springs in. But the downside is you kind of have to offset the keepers because the springs aren't really the right size. So what the machine shop does is actually puts Cummins, their exact right size, right spring rate, everything. It tends to be a great swap out. So that's what we have here. So our Cummins springs with our small block Chevy valves, we're going to be able to move a lot more air, a little bit of a performance upgrade. Now I have my best gasket, head gasket here. A good practice is to go get yourself some, you know, head bolts and, you know, our like long bolts, and use them as studs to kind of help with placement. I was going to do that. I never bought them, but I'm not going to run out to the store to do that right now. I'm just going to fit the head because I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to get this together. So kind of set it here and just hopefully that works. Light this head is not, but we will get it to go. Kind of have to pick it from its ports. What I did go out was get ARP bolts. Now ARP doesn't actually make the correct bolt for this. What they do make is one slightly smaller, and I called them and talked to them, and it is ever so small, guys. So that's the slight difference in the length. But if you can see, the threads actually stop right here on this bolt. So it's almost the exact length. So I'm gonna go ahead and run these ARPs. I've kind of measured them out. Everything looks the way it should. Now we need to torque the head down. And like most motors, you just do a spiral pattern kind of starting outward. So 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of jump around like that. I do have the sequence over here, so I'm going to be following that. And it says go up to 90 to 100 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to go 30, 60, 90, probably like 95, and we'll call it there. With the head on, let's talk lifters and push rods. And I'm excited because that really pushes us towards the whole just engine coming together. Now, this is the old lifters. The old lifters are really an old style. Even in the 55 to 59 manual, it talks about these as an early model lifter. So what I did, since they don't make these at all or even in reproduction, I switched over to the later model lifter. Basically a milk can style is what they call it. Unfortunately, to do that, I had to get a different push rod. Since this is essentially just a hollow push rod or lifter where the push rod sits all the way at the bottom, I needed to get something different. So what I got was this. It's MPR 31 melling. And with them together is exactly the same length. Now, like I said, the upside of this engine being thoroughly rebuilt, hot rodded, and loved throughout the decades as well, all this information was already out there. So it was easy to find what I needed and swap them out. Now, again, I went new old stock. I found the AT88-7s from Sealed Power, made in the USA. So I found these, they're already really good to go. Only had a couple that I had to send out to get reground that weren't perfect on the bottom, but we're ready to go. And the only brand new modern style will be this push rod going on the engine. Let's get this on so we can get everything together, guys. Now I will be putting a little bit of the moly paste right where it meets the camshaft. That way we are definitely not gonna wipe out this camshaft. I'm gonna say it just, you know, to put that good energy out there. Of course, I got the closed one. And just a little bit of assembly lube on the side here. That way everything is nice and lubed up. Yeah. And put it in there. Should fit, yeah, nice tight fit. All the push rods and lifters in, so that means time to get the rocker shaft in. Nice close up so you can see what I'm doing here. This is actually where the oiling comes in. So I'll show you later how the piping goes, but the oiling comes in through here, pops up through here, and comes in through the rocker shaft, which will be this oiling hole here. So we need to put a little gasket right there, seal it off, and then drop this bad boy down. I had this thing completely rebuilt, so they take it all apart, shine up the chrome rod, make sure all the springs are good. If not, replace them, make sure nothing's bent, everything's in spec. They regrind the tips, all of that, so it's essentially a brand new rocker shaft. Well, the GoPro overheated and shut down on me, but I wanted to bring you in real quick. So we just have all the bolts in except 5 and 2, which is actually going to be our studs for our valve cover. These are aftermarket ones. They're a little bit longer than the stock because I'll be using a different valve cover than the stock valve cover. And I'll go over that later, but we need the longer ones. Upside is this is actually made for a Chevy 216 inline 6. Lucky that, you know, GM pretty much reuses everything across all of their lines, so these do fit. Just have to run these down, get all of this torque down. Perfect. Same idea on the other one. Also, what I did off camera was I put this overflow tube in. So as we talked about, oil will come up through that hole I showed you. It goes through the rocker, all the way through oiling everything. And then once it kind of fills up, it has to have somewhere to go. Pops out this overflow tube, drops straight down into the lifter valley and back to the oil pan. And the rocker shaft is in, all torqued down to spec. That's the last of it. The rocker arms themselves are not set to lash at all. Actually, I need the flywheel in to actually set for timing and lash because we don't do that from the harmonic balancer. This engine does it from the flywheel. Old school stuff. So once we get that done, we'll get it. We still got to do some oil lines, accessories, water pump, you know, that kind of thing. But first and foremost, it's almost time to get this thing into paint. We'll seal it off and paint it off. But that's gonna be the next video, guys. That is it for this video. A nice quick engine assembly and we're almost there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. This was a wild ride for me, you know, being my first engine I built and everything like that. As far as the engine here, we're gonna stop. I'm gonna call it a video here. If you wanna see any more of this, you're gonna have to come back for part 2. So please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification, guys. All of that helps me so much. I'm really trying to grow the channel. And don't worry, guys, as soon as this truck's done, that's not where it's stopping. That's pretty much for me when the channel officially starts, because I got a ton of great ideas for you guys. So if you like this video, again, please like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Go check me out there. Much more real-time kind of update what's going on with the projects and stuff. And again, guys, thank you for the support. And if I can do this, guys, remember, this is my first engine, so you can do it too. I'll see you on the next one.